So there's an articulation of a grand idea. Te whakamininga o ngā hapu is the grand idea of the Declaration of Independence, because they knew, on the advice of Busby and others, you can't claim independence unless you have a coherent body that does the claiming. So they got the rangatira together and formed Te Whakamininga o ngā hapu. Now, there's lots of words for a hui, or meetings in Māori, runanga, hui, all these, but whakamininga is a high-level kind of meeting, almost at the spiritual level. It refers to the coming together of the divine will with the human will.
Is the centre of an upcoming talk with three historians and researchers, Dame Claudia Orange, Morgan Godfrey and Carwyn Jones. Carwyn Jones joins us now to tell us a little bit more about that. He is a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Law at Victoria University. Can we just begin today with the Declaration of Independence, He Whakaputanga, which was signed in 1835, 5 years prior to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, our founding document. What is the Declaration of Independence?
It's pretty much what it says on the label. It's a declaration of independence in that sense. So what it is we have the rangatira from the north. We have 34 of them coming together in 1835, making this statement which says that they are the ones who exercise sovereign power and authority, or rangatiratanga, in Aotearoa. And so we have 34 people signing in 1835, but actually there are 18 more that sign, mostly from the north, right up until July of 1839. So, which is only 6 months out from signing of Te Tiriti.
Yeah. So if you think of today's numbers, 4.6 million people we are today, but in those days, in 1830, the significance, in 1835, the significance of 35 chiefs and 18 more, what is the significance of that number? Was it a large grouping of hapu and iwi?
Well, certainly when you look at the people who signed it, the rangatira who signed, we see they're all the kind of big names from the north, and people from the north will know them. So they're people like Tāmati Wakanene, Kāwiti, Honeheke, Hongihika, Nōpera Panakareao. These are all really big names in the north at the time, and so they cover a large number of that population. And also, one of the two people really from outside of Te Tai Tokero who signed was Te Wherowhero.
The first Māori king.
The first Māori king. And he was really important because he really did, by his signing, did expand the scope of He Whakaputanga, the declaration, so that it was seen to include not only Ngāpuhi, but going a little bit wider than that.
Interesting, because Te Wherowhero didn't become the Māori king for another 20-something years after that, didn't he? So yes. He was still a rangatira, and at the time he became king. I think he was in his 80s. He really was a kaumātua at the time. So this would have been in his heyday, really, when he was in his 70s, 60s. He was signing the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, so I'm not sure of his age at the time, but certainly it was at a time where he was already sort of becoming well known as a very prominent and influential rangatira with lots of connections throughout the motu, and so that's why his signing was so important. And of course, a number of these people go on to sign Te Tiriti o Waitangi, but not all of them do, and it was interesting that part of the argument often was that, well, we feel we've already made a statement about our rangatiratanga. We don't need to make another statement about that. And actually the colonial officials tried really hard to try and ensure that as many of the rangatira who had signed the declaration also signed Te Tiriti, because they saw that as an important part of the process of legitimising Te Tiriti as well.
In the Bay of Islands, which was nicknamed the hellhole of the Pacific, what was the relationship between Māori and the British settlers or Pākehā like back then?
I guess one of the things to sort of be aware of is that the Māori population at the time is much more significant than the settler population and the Pākehā population. And
what kind of numbers? Do you have an idea?
Oh, I don't have the numbers to hand, sorry, but this is something that
like a few hundred to a few thousand. That
kind of scale, I think we're talking about. But it's certainly the situation where we have, if there's any sort of law or regulation, that is primarily Māori law. That's essentially tikanga. That's the main authority. And part of actually the reason why we have Busby sent out here, who's the British resident, he's appointed to that role in 1832 and he comes out the following year, and he had a key role in He Whakaputanga. Part of the reason why he's sent out is to try and exercise some regulation over the Pākehā settlers who are here, because there's no kind of Pākehā legal authority in place.
What did the document He Whakaputanga mean for Pākehā? What was written in there for them?
In some ways so Busby encouraged the rangatira in the north to come together and to try and collectivise. Now, some of the evidence at the Waitangi Tribunal in its Te Paparahi o Te Raki inquiry was that the rangatira in the north were already doing that, and they were already looking to how to act collectively, particularly in response to Pākehā settlement and these new arrivals. But so Busby was interested in trying to encourage Māori to set up some of the institutions perhaps that would be familiar to British forms of government and to a Westminster sort of style of government. And so part of what is in He Whakaputanga was the intention to meet as a Congress each year to pass laws. But essentially this is pretty much a Māori statement, in the sense that when we're talking about a declaration, we're not talking about a treaty, which is something where two or more parties come to agree on something. A declaration is really just a unilateral statement that this is our rangatiratanga.
So was Te Tiriti o Waitangi in 1845 years later, was that a progression of the declaration or something new?
So in some senses it's a progression, and it certainly refers back to this collective of rangatira who in He Whakaputanga get referred to as Te Wakaminenga, o ngā hapu o New Tirini, or in English that gets translated to the United Tribes of New Zealand, and we see specific reference to that same group in Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So in that sense it is intended to progress on from the 1835 declaration. In some senses it does provide something new, because it does provide a recognition for another form of authority to exist in Aotearoa. And in the Declaration of Independence in He Whakaputanga, that is something which is explicitly ruled out. The Declaration says that all sovereign power and authority is exercised by the rangatira.
I'm talking with Kawan Jones, and we're talking about the Declaration of Independence and the Treaty of Waitangi today. The Declaration of Independence, some might not know about it, but they may have seen the flag. And I'm talking about the flag, which is white with the red cross, and in the top left box is blue with the 4 white stars. What do you understand it to mean?
So the flag is really important in the sense that this is another part of the context in which we see this kind of official British government involvement, and also the development of these kind of nation-building symbols that we see through really from even earlier than the 1830s really. But the flag is important because it also enables ships to trade under that flag, so it enables access to overseas ports. And one of the things I think is important about the flag is just the emphasis and awareness of participating in a kind of globalised economy as we might think about it today. But that's a really important part of the context of both He Whakaputanga and Te Tiriti, is that Māori weren't sort of sitting in Aotearoa unaware of what was going on in the outside world. We had, since the colony in New South Wales was established, significant engagement there between Māori and official presence there, but also we had Hongi Hika and his whanaunga Waikato travel to London in 1820. They met the king there. So Māori are very aware of this internationalised world and are wanting to participate and engage. And I think the flag is an important part of an expression of that, if you like.
And interesting, as you say, many Māori did go to England and meet with the king and then later the queen. Let's talk about the Treaty of Waitangi. 5 years later, it was drafted and signed. What did it mean for the Declaration of Independence once this was signed?
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting about talking about Te Tiriti and He Whakaputanga together is that actually you can begin to see that He Whakaputanga is not just a sort of stepping stone to Te Tiriti and then to be forgotten about, but actually it helps us to understand what was part of that treaty exchange in 1840 and particularly what the rangatira would have understood by that.
Well, the Declaration was, in a way, this was James Busby's, along with the rangatira, responding to a potential threat from France. And why they were concerned about the French was in part because of the killing of Marion Dufresne in the Bay of Islands much, much earlier, when he and his men unwittingly transgressed tapu regulations and were killed, and some of them were eaten. And so it was taken for granted in the Bay that the French would seek utu. So everyone was very worried about the French government coming to New Zealand. The Declaration was a very firm statement that the rangatira were in command of their own country. And it was in Māori basically claiming for themselves the sovereignty of New Zealand and declaring that to the wider world. That's what that Declaration of Independence was all about, and probably modelled a bit on the American prototype. Well, the British government accepted the Declaration of Independence, and that set the scene for the treaty.
Te Tiriti is often referred to as our nation's founding document, but it's not. We had another one first. In 1835, He Whakaputanga o Te Rangatiratanga o Nutirini, known in English as the Declaration of Independence of the United Tribes of New Zealand, was created. This document is often overlooked, but was the first ever legal document to recognise Aotearoa as a sovereign nation ruled by Māori. He Whakaputanga was drafted by 34 rangatira and 1 British representative, and was signed by Te Whakamininga, or the Confederation of United Tribes. It asserts that the sovereign power and authority in the land lies with Te Whakamininga, and that no foreigners can make laws. Māori saw He Whakaputanga as a way to strengthen their alliance with Great Britain and assert their authority to the wider world. However, the British saw it as a step towards gaining control of Aotearoa. The British king legally acknowledged the declaration, but only 5 years later, the Crown overrode it with the treaty.
So, by way of background, there was a group of rangatira, a group of our leaders who used to come together quite regularly, known as Te Hakamininga o Ngā Hapu o New Tirini, the Confederation of the Chiefs, of the tribal Confederation of Tribal Nations. And they would assemble several times in the early 1800s to try and address the increasing lawlessness of these visitors coming in mainly from England, but also from other places as well, Pākehā we call them. And I'm very much bearing in mind here that we've got an international audience, so I will try and, when I remember, I will try to give you an explanation of these Māori words that we use and we take for granted in this country, by the way. So they didn't come together solely for this. They would come together for issues that were impacting or common issues that they wanted to talk about. And we still do this today. Māori still do this today. Now, 2 very important rangatira leaders, Pungihika and Waikato, visited the English king in London and agreed to form an international diplomatic alliance. And then back in this country, the English drew up an English language declaration of independence and translated it into the language of this country, Māori, called it He Hakaputanga, and it is a statement or a declaration of sovereignty. In the English Declaration of Independence, it's a statement or a declaration of mana in He Hakaputanga. Now, mana is, and my background is in linguistics, so I spend time trying to find translation for words like mana, which we use freely all the time, but are not perhaps understood overseas. So mana is it's a very, very powerful term. It's the ultimate and paramount power and authority derived originally from the gods. And that is something which is held by the hapu over everything. Kia ora,